Good evening, everyone. Our board is reconvening from closed session, and the next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the public hearing on the tentative tax levy. I call to order the public hearing for the proposed 2020 tax levy at 7:05. Kim, would you like to review?
So we posted the notice of the tax levy in the newspaper, and we had no comments on that. So the information is exactly as we presented during our initial thing in November, meeting of 18 million for education fund, 3 million for the O&M, 1.2 million for transportation, 400,000 for IMRF, 475,000 for Social Security, 120,000 for tort, and 3.6 million for special education. So, okay, thank you.
Are there any additional comments from members of the Board of Education regarding the proposed 2020 tax levy? Are there any public comments concerning the proposed 2020 tax levy? I declare the public hearing on the proposed 2020 tax levy closed at 7:06. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the first closed session of the November 17, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next on our agenda is public comment. And we're going to have, there's several public comments here, and so we're going to take turns with the board members reading each of them. It was really my intention to have public comments printed in our board agenda for the public to read. Since we are here in person and we have the ability to have people come and present public comments, that is preferred. And so if people are able to do that, we certainly would like that, but if they are unable or concerned about social distancing and all of those sorts of things, we would like to provide the opportunity to send in the comments, but to have them appear in our board agenda for the public to see online, rather than to read through them in person. But tonight, we're going to go ahead and read the ones that we have. And so I think, Gary, you have the first one.
Sure. To the distinguished members of the school board, parents, teachers, administrators, students in our community are facing challenges that will last much longer than the pandemic itself. Students are now facing mental health issues by not being socially involved in school beyond e-learning. A study released on November 24th, 2020 by Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Suzanne Silverstein, MA-ATR, founding director of the Psychological Trauma Center and Sharing Care Program at Cedars-Sinai, and an expert in psychological trauma, says that families with school-age children are bearing the additional burden of adapting to online or hybrid learning. Silverstein says she's especially concerned about the long-term effects on families coping with instability and those with children who have behavioral issues or other special needs. This pandemic has begun to take its toll on students far greater than the pandemic itself. School District 201 has made choices that may become irreversible if we do not allow our children to be in person as full-day students soon. Surveys have been sent to parents on several occasions asking them what they would decide to do upon sending their children back to school. When the surveys are sent out, we are only given two choices, hybrid and remote. The question you refuse to include is in-person full day. The current survey results were shared by Mr. Carey for the first time recently because of my request to make them public. The results of those surveys show the mass majority would be willing to send their children to school. Though 4 schools had separate results, the district average shows almost 70% were willing to send their children to hybrid learning. If they are willing to send their children in person for the morning, then they obviously would be willing to send them in the afternoon as well. We all know COVID-19 has no boundaries, yet the district is willing to send them in the morning but not the afternoon. It has been proven there is no difference between a full day or half day of school. Since when did COVID-19 decide to only be contagious in the afternoon but not the morning? The hybrid learning places massive amounts of stress on students, parents, and teachers. The amount of effort and disruption to get our children to school for only a couple of hours is exhausting. 2 choices need to be given to both parents and staff, all-day in-person and remote. It has been proven in other districts that the all-day class option is effective and working for students. Yorkville School District has attended full-day in-person since August. My oldest son is a freshman at Yorkville High School. I can confirm that until school began in person for my son, he was clearly showing signs of depression. Once school began and he was able to physically see teachers and fellow students, he mentally did a complete 180 and became himself again. My son is thriving and his grades are doing well compared to when he was remote learning. When I brought this up to some of the school faculty in 201, they said maybe Yorkville numbers are different than Westmont. Were they referring to COVID-19 numbers or grades? Yorkville School District is not having any COVID-19 issues with in-person attendance throughout the entire school district. As for grades, they are correct. They are different. Yorkville School District positivity rates are much higher than Westmont School District. Yorkville School District offers 2 forms of educating, in-person, full 5 days a week, and remote. Westmont is currently at 7.5% the last 2 weeks, and Yorkville is over 14%. If there is faculty that is uncomfortable with in-person, have that staff teach e-learning students. Clearly those that are comfortable can then teach in person. We have board members in District 201 that have constantly voted no to full in-person, yet those board members are still seen in public and via social media living their lives as someone who appears to be out in public functioning without fear or concern of COVID-19. It shows an air of do what I say, not what I do hypocrisy. This has become public perception. I spoke directly with the Yorkville administration to ask them how they set up full-day in-person learning 5 days a week. I was told in speaking with District 201 administration they cannot have full 5-day in-person, 5-day-a-week learning because DuPage County said they can't or the state said they can't. This is a false statement. The truth is that there are recommendations, not laws. We as a district can still choose to open. We clearly have put proper measures in place to attend in person or we would not be doing hybrid at all. We need and must open District 201 to full-day school after the holiday break. You are elected officials and this is your duty to serve the public and not your personal or political opinion. Our children are our future and the future appears to be very bleak. If the children do not get back to in-person classes in our schools, which has been proven to improve their mental health, then we will continue to see an increase in depression, lower grades, resulting in falling behind academically. You, as the school board, have the authority to vote and supersede the administration of District 201. It is time you represent the majority of the 70% that is for in-person, full-day school that elected you. If you are not capable of this, then you should resign, or a petition should be circulated to remove you from the school board. Stephen Fleck.
I have the next comment, Pat Centuri. Remote learning has indeed been a detriment to all of our students in District 201. I appeal to the board to reopen full-day in-school learning for our students before they fall behind any even further. Districts and private schools that have been in full attendance all year have had no issues.
I have the next comment from Stephanie Grimm. I believe the children should be in school full-time or even part-time at this point. I am fortunate enough to have high school-age children who are self-sufficient and can work independently. I don't even know what we would do if we had little ones that need constant attention and guidance. My heart goes out to those parents. My husband and I are both first responders, therefore essential workers, and have to go to work. But having teenagers brings a whole separate slew of problems. I have literally watched both my children's spirits die these past few months. My daughter, who was struggling with some depression before, is now having serious problems. And good luck finding someone for them to talk to. Therapists are spread so thin right now due to the increase of mental health issues and depression. I worry every day about the health of my kids, and I'm not even thinking COVID. My daughter is a junior and not doing well grade-wise at all because she struggles with the remote learning. I worry about what this will do for her getting into college. This is affecting the rest of her life. I try to get her motivated, but nothing is working. She needs a classroom and human interaction. My son seems to do okay grade-wise. He is a freshman, so trying really hard, but I can see that motivation is fading fast, and I fear he too will lose interest. The kids also struggle with having a quiet place to work. We have a small house, 2 older children and 2 dogs, constant distractions and fighting. I just really feel the kids need to be back in school, give them some normalcy in this time of uncertainty.
I have the next comment from Kenneth Er. I am a parent of a kindergarten student. I am fortunate enough to have a profession which allows me to work during this awful pandemic. I am also fortunate enough to have a wife who is able to stay home with our children. That being said, the lack of full-time student attendance as voted on by the school board is causing numerous problems for my family. The remote learning portions of the learning have been ineffective in engaging my son in a safe learning environment. While he is not in physical harm by any means, his emotional well-being is being threatened. The lack of face-to-face, in-person engagement has created obvious behavioral difficulties for my son and our other child. My wife has also endured these difficulties in that she must constantly be present in order to keep my son on track. I have also personally noticed the teachers having difficulties maintaining a virtual classroom, and instead of being able to address student needs, have resorted to turning off the camera. I am not worried about my child learning his ABC. I am worried that at such a young age, his socialization skills, communication skills, and interpersonal relationships will be damaged and off track for years to come should this hybrid or full remote learning continue. It is incumbent upon the board to hold our children's best interests and safety in mind. I implore you to vote to return to full in-school learning at the earliest opportunity, that being following holiday break.
I have the next comment from Tony Swetnicki. My 12-year-old daughter is struggling more than ever this year with learning. She has become more depressed, experiencing more anxiety, isolation, and loneliness than ever. All this in return is also making her more angry and violent, since as a junior higher, her emotions are already changing from previous years due to puberty, and it's a learning process on how to handle all of these new emotions. The only free time she gets is after school, when she is allowed for periods of time to interact with kids her age. For my experience in life in junior high was by far the hardest years. It's where I learned responsibility for my own actions and thoughts. It's where I learned how to choose my own friends and find a style that suited me. Our children are not being given that opportunity. In-person school is something I strongly believe should be started again, and I am 100% it's what's best for our children. The longer this lasts, the more struggle my daughter has with life, and I'm afraid if it continues, it will lead to a depression that will lead to suicide increase in children. They don't understand the pandemic as we do, although who really does understand it at all? And their brains aren't developed enough to fully understand it at all, and it is creating fear and uncertainty due to the sudden change in what they remember of life before COVID. And they fear it'll never go back to that way. I have heard also that my child isn't the only one struggling and failing classes. Is this what we want for our children? In conclusion, I'd like to add that junior high is awkward physically, and I can't imagine how it must feel constantly looking in the mirror while in school. Let's admit we all kind of do this too while in Zoom. And going through awkward acne or feeling of insecurities about your looks, having to all day during school see yourself looking back at you instead of like pre-COVID, we were looking at our teachers and classmates. I would like to add that my child is an only child, and it is often just her and myself at home. She needs that interaction now more than ever, and let's be honest, Zoom meetings aren't the same as in person.
I hope this letter helps and we choose and agree full day in school is what is best for our children and for the parents. Thank you and God bless America.
So I have Angela's comment here. Is there one before that we missed?
No?
This one,
This one,
and
but
then
then this,
that's Ange.
this one here?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Next comment is from Angela Stecate. I hope the board is doing well. I would like to thank Superintendent Carey and everyone involved in taking the extra precautions of keeping everyone safe through the holiday. Now that we'll be starting the new year and second semester in the school, would you reconsider the plan? Is it possible to reassess the remaining part of the school year? I understand that plans do take a long time to create and implement, but is this a possibility at all? While I do understand you cannot address public comment, I would hope this could be a topic of discussion the community would be able to hear about in the future. Thank you.
The next comment is from Becky Blair. I fully support what Mr. Fleck has submitted. I feel our school board has failed us completely, as I see larger schools all around us, Hinsdale, still offering in-person learning while we, the smallest district around, only allowed remote. Private schools all around us have maintained full-day in-person learning since August. I thought we were a progressive school district. I'm so disappointed in our board, so disappointed in our administration. You have failed us and our children. I'm considering pulling my child and enrolling her somewhere that offers actual classes. Even though she is doing weak in school, she is struggling mentally. Students must return to in-person learning on January 4th, not January 19th. I fully support Mr. Fleck's statements and will gladly sign a petition to have every one of you removed from your position on the board, as you no longer represent the sentiments of the majority of the district.
I have the next comment from Dana Heyjack. I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the board and administrators for their commitment to following the lead of public health officials in the midst of a public health crisis. When the decision was made to follow the guidance of the health departments when making decisions regarding in-person learning, our leadership recognized this was not their area of expertise and admitted they needed to follow the lead of those who it was. This is what informed leadership looks like. Frankly put, school administrators and board members are not qualified to make public health calls. This is why we have systems in place to inform them and guide them. I am hopeful that experts at the health department deem it safe to return to in-person learning very soon. What I hope for our community is that we all do our part by wearing our masks and avoiding gatherings so that we can prioritize in-person learning for our students. We all have a role to play in making in-person learning possible, and our district has shown us and told us they want us back in person safely. It's on us as a community to help us get there safely. Thank you for your time and dedication.
Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Stipend position, Noela Reyes, girls soccer coach, Westmont High School. Number 2, approval of board travel expenses. Number 3, renewal of S-CHIP insurance agreement. Number 4, approval of fiduciary liability insurance coverage. Number 5, approval of additional November 2020 expenditure report. Number 6, approval of December 2020 expenditure report. Number 7, ratification of November 2020 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a roll call, please.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes?
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes. Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes. Next on the agenda are discussion and information items. The first one is presentation of monthly financial statements.
Right, for the month of November, or October, the district received $460,000 from the state. There's $4,000 of fiscal year 21 payments vouchered but not released. The district did receive one installment of the 2019 tax levy in the amount of $804,000. So total property taxes received to date are $24.1 million, which represents a 97.7% collection rate. So this is a little bit higher than the last 2 years, and as we've gone through this tax cycle, the percentages have varied a lot from the prior years. When you get November, or get the November ones, we're back below normal again. So they're just really, the schedule is really off this year. In the ed and tort funds, revenues are comparable to the prior year averages. We did receive $18,000 of fiscal year 20 payments and $242,000 of fiscal year 21 payments. And $120,000 of that was for evidence-based funding. And in the O&M fund, the revenues are comparable to the prior average. We did receive $37,000 of the CARES Act grant funding this month. And then the transportation fund, our revenues are greater than the prior year because we received the first quarter of the transportation payments in the amount of $163,000. Last year, we hadn't received the first quarterly payment at this time, so that's why they're higher. Expenditures in the ed and tort funds are comparable to the prior year averages, both with and without contingencies. In the O&M fund, we are 21.81% spent to date without contingencies and 20.74% with. And we were 27.79% spent to date at this time last year. And then expenditures in the transportation funds are lower because of the fact that we are remote and we still have not finalized our amendments with our transportation providers. And then we have a little over $23 million invested right now. Our interest earnings through October are only $14,000. Interest income is, virtually non-existent this year. Rates are incredibly low. And then the activity accounts are there as well. And then on the lunch report, again, it's a lot this year. Now, overall, we are comparable to last year, receiving funding in a different category because meals are free for students. We're not receiving national lunch program. We're receiving additional different. If you look at the bottom, we're not tracking those by students. There's no comparison, by building what participation was this year. Anyone have
That for the whole year or just through the end of the?
For the whole school year.
Okay.
But, everything's subject to change.
Okay.
Have we, as far as families picking up meals on, for the most part, so
Yeah.
we're going to plan for it and prepare it?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
I have to say, meals myself, it's a lifesaver.
Good.
Lifesaver.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next discussion item is update on the 2020-2021 school year.
So as I've been doing with each of our board meetings, bringing the board and the committee up to speed on where we are in terms of the school year and planning for going forward. And I always like to review in the beginning But again, we're in phase 4, tier 3 mitigation, which again limits the size of a group inside. And then, you know, phase 5 is when we essentially have herd immunity. Vaccine is available or no new cases over a sustained period of time. And we're all hearing the great news about a vaccine that's actually starting to be administered to our medical personnel. And I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. And then, again, our guiding principles. You know, we understand the health and safety of our students and staff, and we also understand, you know, the emotional, mental health of our students and staff as well. We take that into consideration. Providing meaningful, engaging academic experiences, addressing the social and emotional needs of our students, the consistency and stability for our students and staff, and then continuing providing professional learning opportunities for staff so that they can meet the needs of the students during this time. We have been following the DuPage County Health Department, and again, this isn't a mandate, this is a recommendation from DuPage County Health, but this involves our decision-making matrix when we decide when we can be in person versus hybrid. And again, when we're at a substantial level of transmission, the recommendation is remote learning, and that's where we're currently at. This is, and I've updated the, we posted this presentation in board docs, but then I've updated it every Monday. Page County Health Department updates the school metrics and releases them. So this is the most current. And there's, again, the different metrics we look at. We have 4 of them are still at the substantial level. The one nice thing that we're seeing, you know, after Thanksgiving, even though we're still at the substantial level, we haven't really seen a surge on top of the surge, so to speak. And so that's hopefully that means that people were following the guidance over the Thanksgiving holiday, and now it's going to be that much more important for people to follow that guidance over the holiday break. In terms of our 7-day rolling positivity, and again, this is as of today, December 14th, and you can see that Westmont is at 7%, Downers Grove 7.95%, Clarendon Hills 9.56%, Hinsdale 8%, and this has been fluctuating each day, the 7-day average, and so we have been trending, you know, between 7-8%. Some of the other communities have been as low as 6%, and then they bounce up. So it's been fluctuating, whereas before it was very, very consistent. Again, as a county, we're over 8% positivity rate, and we're still seeing the cases under 20. And again, the number of new cases per 100,000 is well above the 100. We've been averaging between 500 and 600 over the last few weeks. In terms of our own district data, you can see where we're at in terms of as of the 17th. And then actually that should be December 17th. That's actually updated to December 17th, not November 17th. And then where we're at total. And so we've had some people who have had to quarantine. Unfortunately, though, most of our employees have been able to return to work. And then the question that came out of last board meeting is kind of an update on attendance, student engagement. And so this is by building. And so you can see Miller. This is the number of students who have been absent. And so they've been running between 90 and 80% attendance, or 76% attendance. And that's definitely lower than what would be typical for the school year. In terms of student engagement, you can see the kindergarten, it's standards-based, so it's students who are meeting standards and then working towards standards, not meeting standards. And so the data, and if you talk to Mr. Weiler, the principal, he'll definitely agree the student engagement is better than it was last spring, but it's not as good as what can be anticipated in a typical year when there's in person. He said it's definitely a challenge with the younger learners with remote learning. sometimes just logging in and getting on the Zoom meetings. We have some families who prefer not to have their child attend Zoom meetings, and so when we go remote, then there's very little interaction between the school and the student. But then when we go into small groups or hybrid learning, then the students do attend. And then you can see the first grade data, again, similar story in terms of better than last spring, not as good as what would be typical for this group of students.
Kevin?
Yes.
Sorry, can you go back to Miller's attendance?
Yep.
I think you said this was lower than average, meaning if they're in person, they have a higher absentee rate? Or do you mean?
No, for a typical year.
So the absentee rate is higher in a typical year?
There's the absentee rate is higher in remote
Got
than it is in a typical year.
I just wanted to be clear on,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay, I just want to make sure
So
we're
yeah,
clear.
definitely our attendance is better when
We're in person.
we're in person.
Okay.
Right. And then with Manning, you can see the attendance, and they've been averaging in the mid to upper 90%, which is, again, maybe a little bit lower than what would be typical when we would be in person, but it's still, the attendance has been very strong. And similar with the engagement in terms of where students are, if they're meeting the standards, not meeting the standards. Again, much better than what we were experiencing in the spring, but not as strong as what would be when we were in person. So there's definitely a difference with the student engagement. And then Westmont Junior High, when you get to the high school and junior high, now it's a little bit different because there's actual class periods, and so students are attending, logging into several different Zooms. And so you can see the difference between a student who is attending the full day and then versus a student who's attending the partial day. So definitely there are times during the day when the student is not attending. And again, the 97% would be closer to typical in a normal school year. And then student work completion, it's again, not as strong as what you would anticipate if we were in person, better than the spring, but still, it's their data's pretty good for the student engagement piece. High school attendance, similar to the other buildings, the attendance is strong, but not as strong as we would anticipate if you look at our school report card data. And then in terms of the engagement, we do have 68% of our students have no failing grades, and then you can see one failing grade, there's 13%, two failing grades, almost 9%, and then two or more failing grades, 10%. That is higher than what we would anticipate. I do know the high school, though, and I can bring this data at the next board meeting, they'll improve this data. I just know Jack Balderman and his staff. And so it won't, a lot of this is work completion and getting students to complete the work. And so that's what they're focusing on. Just in general, the small groups when we were doing small groups, and we're resuming that this week, that's one of the interventions that's focused on those students who maybe have not been engaged, have not been attending, who need to focus on that work completion. In a typical year, we do home visits. That has increased dramatically this year. Not only for students who are not engaged, but also just to pop by a house and talk to the students, and so that's happening. But a lot of home visits in all the schools. Numerous conferences with parents and students have been ongoing. Additional time for work completion. So even though the semester ends Friday, the schools are building in additional time for that work completion, allowing for redos and retakes with assignments. If assignments need to be done better, they'll allow the student to redo the assignment or retake the assessment. And then one of the things that we're planning for is, we know we're going to have students that are going to have learning gaps as a result of the school year. And so really looking at our summer learning program, and it definitely has to be more robust. We're gonna have to really partner with parents to get their children there, you know. But we definitely are gonna have to, we can't afford after trying to do this through a pandemic and then take a complete summer off. So we're planning for a very robust summer learning experience. Right now, the plan is to return to in-person learning on the 19th. And again, you know, we're planning for, we know that it's difficult for families. I hear more and more about, it was, you know, Thanksgiving they were able to navigate, but the thought of not getting together with family over the holidays is very difficult for them, and so this builds in a little bit. We are, though, reviewing our decision-making metrics and our criteria for in-person versus remote, and so we are looking at what other districts are doing. We are looking at what the data is showing us about students in person, and we're also, you know, looking at, you know, possibly the one model for pre-K through 12 doesn't work best, but maybe we need to treat different groups of students differently when we're making those decisions. And so we are taking all that in consideration. Our goal is to have as many of our students in person on a regular basis for the remainder of the school year. That's what we're gearing up for. And so we know how challenging this has been for everyone. It's challenging for our families, our students, our staff, well aware of that. And so we will be presenting to the board kind of what our plan is for that second semester and our matrix for decision making and how we're planning on finishing this year. Any questions?
I guess I just want to clarify, when you said the remote learning starts, no, I'm sorry, on January 19th, we're going to go back to in-person learning. You're talking the hybrid method.
Right, right.
Okay.
Right now, a hybrid, but again.
I understand, but it could change.
Right, and we're having some conversations about what hybrid looks like, you know. The challenge is always going to be, and I'll be honest, and I know some schools are going full day, but the challenge is always lunch then because of, you know, students can't wear masks, you know, during lunch. Oh, I do have one more slide. I forgot about this because this is the good news, right? The hope on the horizon. You know, they did approve a vaccine. It's being administered. There was some question as to where education would fall into the distribution. And so actually 1A is currently who is starting to receive the vaccine, and that's healthcare professionals and then long-term care facilities. The next group, those are essential workers, and educators are part of that group. And so it all depends on the availability of the vaccine, how quickly it can be distributed to the various counties. But DuPage County Health Department is letting school districts know they're anticipating March, April that schools will be receiving the vaccine. And so that definitely, obviously, helps us to have in-person learning. They still have not completed any pediatric trials, and so the vaccine still will not be available for students. That they're anticipating summer that would occur. But you know, that's again something to look forward to, light at the end of the tunnel. And then that, you know, then the challenge of, you know, extending the school day, that becomes a little bit easier to accomplish. So, any other questions?
I have a quick question,
Sure.
a couple of quick questions. During the hybrid, was when the high school was in for a little bit, were they doing lunches or was that they were in half days? I thought they were full days.
They were doing lunch, but with only half of their, well, less than half of their enrollment, because it was only families that elected hybrid, and then they
They had the AB schedule.
did the AB
Okay.
schedule.
Okay,
So, yeah.
great. And then And also, I just wanted to say too that I'm so appreciative and grateful for all of the work that the administrators and the teachers have done. I feel like you guys have done a really nice job of listening to the community and following data and, you know, evolving how we're going to approach this based on how the situation evolves. You know, we've talked before how it's not a static situation, and, you know, and so I think that, you know, you guys have just done a really excellent job with that, and I'm so appreciative that you'll be reviewing the criteria for in-person hybrid versus remote. Can you talk a little bit just about what the small groups look like in each building? I don't know, or maybe that would be information at the next meeting that we can.
Yeah, I can, I'll confirm this, but basically, for the small groups, again, it's students who need additional support. So in some cases, the students may be working with a teacher assistant, and it's more along the support is more staying on task, completing work, you know, those types of things. Other students do need some additional support and instruction from interventionists, so reading specialists, ELL support, and so then it's actually a teacher that's working with those individuals. So it all depends on the needs of the student.
Okay, I guess, sorry, I should have been a little bit clearer as far as the number of days that students can come in for those small groups, because I think the elementary right now is just Tuesday, Thursday.
Right
Are you
now,
looking to expand that maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we got up to 4 days. Did we?
Miller is still Tuesday,
Yeah,
Tuesday,
it's
Thursday, not Monday, Friday.
Tuesday, Thursday. I'm trying to remember how we did in the fall, honestly. Wow. But I thought we increased it to 4 days, like we started 2 days and then increased it to 4 days. But yeah, definitely that's one of the things we want to do is to offer that support more frequently.
Awesome, yeah, I have a feeling that there's probably a growing need for it, you know,
Right.
as the e-learning fatigue is setting in, just students getting work done is, so it's not always gonna just be the students with special needs, it's the students who are like, I can't do this
Right.
anymore. But, you know, being in hybrid on the 19th hopefully will help that. If for some reason, because who knows what will happen by then, and who knows what Christmas will look like, but if for some reason we need to stay in remote learning, I think it would be just really great as part of this plan that will be presented to at least look for increased opportunities for those small groups to come onto campus.
Right, definitely.
I have a question regarding when you said you're looking at the metrics to, you know, change how you make decisions. Is there a goal time? Like, is that something, is there a point in the semester that you look to have that by?
I wanted to have that by the next board meeting,
Okay.
so that the board knows and can give feedback on, okay, this is what I'm thinking in terms of how we look at the data from the Page County Health Department and the various metrics and what will drive our decision-making. So for the next board meeting, I want to have that for the board to see.
So then would it make sense for us to potentially have an extra meeting, because the next board meeting is January 12th, and we've got plans to be back in school on January 19th. What about if we go to that board meeting on the 12th and we find out that we need to tweak those plans even more in those 7 days between getting those kids in class?
That would be up to the board.
Okay.
You know, I think, well, you know, nobody knows exactly how everything's going to play out, but I think that the plan would be in line with what we are, you know, what I'm anticipating for the 19th. But that, you know, and there can always be, you know, feedback from the board and can be tweaked, you know. So that's kind of the board decision if you guys want to have a special board meeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have everything in place so that the kids can get back in hybrid or remote by the 19th, and then,
Oh, yeah.
and ideally not leave it,
Right.
you know, and like, so that we can really make that happen and start making some gains again in our second half of the school year.
Right.
Any other questions on this topic?
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure everybody else got it, so if anything was covered. So, can you explain to me, and I apologize if this is again, a reiteration, and also, I just thank you, because I know that this is challenging. It's challenging in a lot of different ways. So I don't need to re-say that. But what is the difference between why we have a challenge being in school and a private school can be in school 5 days a week full time? What are we required to do by law that potentially the private schools aren't? Like, what are we missing, right? What?
I think one thing that's missing is, I can't speak for all private schools because there's all different types of private schools, but I do know that the Catholic schools that operate under the Archdiocese, the Archdiocese took the lead and made a statement that all schools would be in person. School districts have not received that uniform guidance from any entity. That hasn't come from, at a national level, hasn't come from the State Board of Education, hasn't come from regional education. And so we haven't gotten that directive. And so then what ends up happening is each local district is trying to make the best decisions for its community. And so none of us are health officials, and so we're looking at the data, and we're all and we're listening to our community, we're listening to our employees, and we're trying to make the best decision. And so that's why you're seeing not every school district is necessarily on the same page with this.
So from like a staffing standpoint, because really, as I understand it, and we've had a lot of conversations in all the board meetings, that one of our biggest challenges is staffing. Our district is significantly smaller than almost all of our neighboring districts, the closest district being Lisle. But if you take into account, I think Wheaton is one of them that comes to mind, that is a unit district that has managed to get their kindergarten kids in school and their younger kids in school, but their older ones are not. I mean, Wheaton is 10 times the size of us. They have 12,000 students, and we have 1,200, which makes a significant staffing difference. So, like, how are the Catholic schools or the private schools handling that staffing change, so that they're still in 5 days a week when they have people who need to quarantine, when they have people who get sick, and I'm talking about teachers and support staff in particular, not the kids, but like, how are they doing that in their schools? Do they have to have the same, who needs to be with a class, I guess?
It varies from private school to private school, because the public schools, we have to follow the Illinois School Code, and there are certain things legally that we need to follow. And like, for instance, earlier in the fall, we had our compliance review from the ROE, Regional Office of Education. So they come in and they check to make sure that everybody is correctly certified for whatever role there is in the district, and they check all those things. And so we have to follow, the Illinois School Code. Private schools have the option of, and I don't know the exact term, but basically it's like an endorsement from the State Board of Ed. They don't necessarily have to go through with that, and so then if they do, there are some things that they still have to follow, but they don't necessarily have to follow exactly what we do. And one example, because I do have a sister and a niece that teach in a Catholic school, so sometimes we have these discussions, because there are a certain number of days legally we have to be in attendance, and sometimes private schools, they look at that requirement differently, and so they may not be physically, have the same number of days, and so, and nothing happens as a result. But, we would there possibly would be a penalty for public schools if they don't meet the minimum number of days of a school year, you know.
But what would happen if we didn't have like a teacher to be in a classroom, right? If, and I'm throwing this out.
Right.
Like if we have one home ec class, and that teacher can't be in the classroom because they have to quarantine for 10 days, or they have COVID, unfortunately. What happens to that class if we're in person? What happens to that class if that teacher's unable to teach it? Is it on pause? Like,
Well, you would try to get a sub,
okay,
and depending upon what the class is, you know, a foods class is interesting because in many cases, the sub would not be a certified foods teacher, and so the students would be doing work, but wouldn't necessarily be doing, you know, food preparation. Like they would be doing more things out of the book probably, and those types of things. So
okay. So that actually brings me to a question I had: is what are the requirements to be a sub? As I understand it, we've got, and this is what I hear, it's conjecture. We have a sub shortage in education and in Illinois State. We've got a teacher shortage. What are the requirements to be a sub? Like, could I be a sub? Could somebody from the community be a sub or sign up to be a sub to help with this piece of it?
you need a college degree, and then you have to register through the ROE. And then once you are approved through the ROE, then you can contact school districts to let them know that you are available to sub. And then we have our, you know, screening process as well.
So are we allowed as a district to put that information on our website? Like, hey, we're hiring for subs. These are the things you need to do. And are we allowed to put that on our website to help in that way?
We can you know, advertise for subs.
Okay.
Typically we don't hire subs. Like there are some districts, and again, larger districts where, you know, they can have, they'll hire permanent subs. And then they have individuals in our district that they send to different places because, you know, larger staff, more absenteeism, they'll have somewhere for that person to work all the time. This year, and so, you know, there are some subs that like to come to our district and will only sub for our district. This year we have identified a sub for each building to kind of be our person, you know, and so if we don't have an absence, we're utilizing that person a little bit differently. So we are taking that step.
Okay.
But, I mean, yes, we can, you know, let people know what they need to do to become a sub, but typically we don't hire our subs.
It would be, I think it would be super helpful, because I know that, like, we need to hire folks, but I don't know who, because I go to the website, and I would have to be, like, driven to go to the jobs page on the website, and I just don't have the time in my day to do that. But,
Can I just jump in for a second about that? As somebody who works in a private school, teaches and is an administrator in one, just to speak a little bit more to that and the sub thing and the staffing thing, because it is, I mean, you said it, Leah, and Kevin, you know this, that just getting adults in those classrooms and is difficult. There is a sub shortage. It's actually fairly simple to get a sub certification, and so I think that is, you know, great for people to hear, those that are looking to help out the district in some way. You know, volunteer that, get the certification, go through ROE, and I think that's, you know, certainly something that's helpful. What gets a little tricky though, and the way that we're handling at our school is, you know, we made the decision for safety just to only do internal subbing. We have a couple of those in-house subs, and they've been helping out, and then our teachers have been just helping each other out as well, which is really fantastic. But I think the other difficult thing about bringing in an outside sub, which is why I'm grateful that our teachers are doing it, is that, and I'm sure this happens when they're in hybrid, is that these outside subs, oftentimes who are people who are retired, have to come in, open up a Chromebook, get the kids at home logged onto Google Meet, and then address the students that are in the classroom. So It's a little bit trickier with the technology thing, so subbing, I think, is a little bit more challenging than it has been. I don't think it's impossible, but just to speak a little bit more to why I think there are some of the challenges of getting subs in the subs in the classroom. It's not as easy as just come in. But nevertheless, I mean, a shout out for subs. We definitely could use all of the subs right now, because the teachers a lot of times will be teaching from home remotely. You know, go into Google Meet and they'll be in with their kids in the classroom, the kids at their home while they're at home, and then the adult is just kind of supervising, but getting all of that organized is tricky. But yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too that just public school districts versus private schools are completely different entities. You know, one is kind of more of a business model and the other is a public model. And so there's, you know, aside from the Archdiocese, a whole slew of other kind of differences in how they run. And I think that, you know, that makes a little bit of a difference too.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful, because as someone who is not in education, you know, I hear, right, we're short on subs, we need staff, we need this, right? But I also hear the community wanting to support. So, right, so what we can do to support, which is amazing. And that really helps, having that kind of private perspective and then also the public perspective, and that business model versus the public service model is important to understand. So how about on a non-certified staff situation? Because if it seems like we have more non-certified staff not being able to certify or being out for possible or having to quarantine or having COVID exposure versus our certified teachers. Is that a piece that we need more support on? Is that non-certified staff? And I know that's a lot of different people in our buildings, everything from our food service and our janitorial to our teachers' assistants. What part of that non-certified staff would be a barrier for us to be in school and in person?
I don't know if there's one area that's a barrier. Right now, as we're currently operating, depending upon what group it is, it's it's almost trying to keep people busy, because food service is an example, because of the way we're doing food service now. It's not the traditional, we have food service in each of the buildings and so forth, and so we're just, so if we have a food service person who needs to quarantine, we can absorb that very easily.
Like a teacher's assistant needing a quarantine.
Right.
Okay.
Whereas our teaching assistants, and the other thing too is that we did get an okay from the ISBE. If we do have that situation where the teacher is quarantined but still is able to teach, and the students are in the classroom, a TA can be present. They can't provide instruction, but they can be an adult who's an employee of the district to supervise. So we can do that in that instance. So in terms of non-certified, we did hire some additional TAs at the beginning of the year because we knew for hybrid, and so right now we're doing fine with those as well.
Good, awesome. So that is incredibly helpful information. Thank you. I'm just listing off what have I gone through already. I understand that, and this is a piece of the larger plan, the Wednesday break, kind of that we decided on, that remote break. How's that working in our different schools? Because I definitely see it differently for my Miller kiddo versus my Manning kiddo, and I'm wondering if part of the overall plan is to adjust when that break day is for what works best for the different learning levels.
We are looking at that Wednesday time and how it's utilized. The challenge is, and sometimes people don't like to hear this, when you're a unit district, sometimes it's that mindset is, sometimes there's an expectation that what happens in one school happens, and understanding that we have, different grade levels, and so it's always going to be a little bit different, It's never going to be lockstep. And so we are looking at that in terms of how we're utilizing that time and what it looks like in each of the schools. So that is part of,
because it definitely is, and I can imagine that it probably works a little bit better as a, not necessarily a break in the week, but a pause to focus on your work in the week at the higher levels, but for the younger levels, it's almost like a mini weekend, and then we have to like come back to the weekend, or come back to the week, which is a little, so, okay, cool. So we're taking a look at that and the potential for kind of adjusting that for different buildings. From my understanding, over the course of the last couple of months, one of the biggest barriers to the small groups, being in person, time, getting information, getting consistency, has been the transportation factor, which is almost entirely out of our control. We don't have our own buses in district. We are not big enough to do that at all, so we have to contract out for a variety of different vendors, from taxi services to Sunrise and some larger buses. Does it make sense for us to make a call for a longer period of time so that we can keep that transportation in place, so that we don't have kind of what happened when we were back in school, where we weren't sure like what our start time was going to be because of the buses and whatnot? And also, is that part of what we could add on to that Miller kind of small group situation, so we can expand that for the younger kids in the afternoon? Is that something we're looking at or talking to our transportation companies about already?
Well, the fact that we've kind of worked through some of these issues this first semester, it makes it easier for us to pivot need be, and we were able to work some of those things out. So some of those things won't be a roadblock going forward. The thing that we want to keep in mind, though, is the social distancing that we need to maintain in our classrooms. And one of the things that we're doing as a district is we are following the guidance. So if our students need to be 6 feet in a classroom, they're 6 feet in a classroom. Not every school is doing that, so that also figures into how many students you can have at one time in a building and so forth. So the same thing is true of buses. One of the things that the reason why we're surveying parents on if they still want remote or if they want in person now is because we have to see what those numbers look like and what that potentially does to transportation, because we can only put so many students on a bus because of social distancing. And like you said, we contract with Westway. Well, Westway only has so many buses, and we're not the only district they're working with. And so we need to work through all these logistics and make sure that they can accommodate the number of students. And so, and that is part of the conversation. Okay, so when can we, flip a bus around and get more kids into a school, and can we, how can we make those different changes? So that is part of the planning process.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that, because boy, there's just nothing more frustrating than for you guys to put a plan together, for the admin to put a plan together, for it to hit the board and we all approve it, and then transportation throw something off, something that's so entirely out of our control. So I'm really happy to hear that. Did we see an uptick in quarantines or folks that were not able to certify after Turkey Day, after Thanksgiving?
We saw, well, here's the thing. From the student perspective,
Yeah.
we don't have that data.
From the staff perspective.
Right, and I'll be honest, we want our families to still report. Like, we don't have that data, so we don't know. I hear things through the grapevine, this family, there's, 1 or 2 people that have been diagnosed. Staff, the last couple of weeks, we have seen a bump in a couple individuals needing to be quarantined, testing positive. So that did happen a little bit. Again, for us, it's not a huge number because we're small. Yeah. But we did see some individuals.
Okay. Yeah. And I just wanted to, because I think that 2-week post-Christmas quarantine is hard not to question.
Sure. But
when we've already seen an uptick from Thanksgiving, we certainly can expect to see at least that or more potentially from Christmas. So I'm appreciative of us keeping that 2-week quarantine in place, even though I know it might be challenging. But how can we expand, or are we expanding on supporting the social emotional needs? Because definitely Zoom fatigue isn't even the word for it. And I know that many of our public comments called out depression, suicide, for kids and adults. And I know that we can't do anything for the adults. But we can certainly do stuff for the kids, and we call it out in our plan. How can we expand what we're already doing, or what are our plans to expand what we're already doing for those kids who might not have IEPs or 504 plans yet, or maybe on the path to them, or maybe next year, hopefully we have a normal school year, those kids would go back to normal and wouldn't need the support. What are we doing this year for those kids?
We are providing, again, staff development. Our last SIP day, we provide staff development for the staff on how to better address the social and emotional needs of our students. And that's something that we'll continue. We'll continue to, we're reaching out to other entities for support. So that's something that we are focused on. And as we are planning for going forward, we do want to focus more on the whole child and not just the academic piece.
Yeah, okay. So I definitely would like to see some more in that next plan coming out. Some more specific stuff about what we're doing just to support that social emotional piece for not just the IEP kids and the 504 kids, but the kids who wouldn't necessarily be in the small groups and whatnot. And then kind of my only other piece is a concern / a little bit of a question. The high school numbers, the failure numbers are, they're concerning. And I know that we have a very long history of getting it done, which is amazing. And I do believe that they'll be able to get it done. I just wonder at what cost. 20 home visits in a day, 10 home visits in a day. How long can we keep that up for? And what is the ultimate long-term cost at the high school level? And I do think those kids that are the juniors in high school, I mean, I think back to my junior year in high school, and that was like, you better get your grades in place because this is what admission decisions are made on. And I hope colleges would take that into effect for the juniors of this year. But I just wonder, how long can we keep that up, and at what cost to our staff, but also what we can do to support those kids, especially at that high school level, because that's scary, being that much higher in our failure rates than we have been in previous years with our 99% graduation rate. That's scary. So I think I'd like to see some more information from the high school in that plan.
Sure.
That's not just kind of, we're gonna get it done. Because I do want to think about the whole high school, right? How are we holistically thinking about supporting our staff and our students there so that we can be successful. So thank you, and thank everybody for your time. And my 100 questions, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, are there any other questions on that topic? Okay, let's go on to elementary school planning for 2021-2022
Sure.
school year.
And this is more about kind of letting the board know that, again, you know, this is, and I'm not going to go through the entire board memo, but, you know, this has definitely been a difficult year, but at the same time, it really presents a unique opportunity because one of the things that this year has done for us is, you know, those things that we do really well as a district have really shown for us. And at the same time, some of those areas that we need to be better at, those are magnified, you know? So it's that opportunity to really take a look at our district as a whole. And it's a pause. And, you know, I think, you know, we're so locked into what school looks like and what our district looks like that, you know, this has really forced us to think out of the box. And then at the same time, you know, we know next fall we can't just open our doors like any other school year. And so we're starting that long-range planning process. And the other thing that I know there's an undercurrent maybe hasn't come up in public comment or at the board table, but we started the year in grade level centers at Manning and Miller. And so there's a question, you know, what's next year? Is it gonna be grade level centers? And, you know, we could just go through a process and decide, do we wanna stay in grade level centers or do we wanna go back to traditional K-5 buildings? But it's a bigger question than that, you know, in terms of how are we gonna address our needs for our students? How are we gonna address the whole needs of our students? You know, can we do things better and can we do things differently? And I think rather than saying we need to be grade level centers or no, we need to be neighborhood schools, it's this is the direction we want to see our schools go. And this is the model that helps us get there. So that question, as we work through this process, that question will be answered, but it's going to be part of a bigger solution. And so there is a timeline. I did sit in on, Lindsay had a SIP meeting, a Zoom SIP meeting last night, or was it last night?
Yeah. Yeah, marathon Zooms last night.
It's been long days, short weeks, you know? So, to kind of just let her SIP team, her parents who are involved in it know. But, you know, Tim and Lindsay are going to be doing a podcast that'll go out tomorrow, letting the parents know this is a process that they're going to be undertaking and individuals have part of it. It's going to dovetail with our strategic planning process, so this is going to be part of our strategic planning process. And so the 14th and 21st, that's designed just to listen, you know, have some essential questions and just listen to our parents, because sometimes that's what we need to do, and that's what we hear sometimes is, you know, you need to hear us, you need to listen. And then there will be some, you know, follow-up conversations and meetings, but then each board meeting, there will be an update brought to the board on the process. And we want to bring this into a landing in March so that we have a better idea of what the next school year is going to look like, what the makeup of our buildings will be. And so we're starting that process now, and then the board will obviously have opportunities for input into it as well.
So I have to say, I was on the meeting last night, and I'm on the SIP team for Manning too, and so exciting. Like, this is so cool. I myself am that person who gets stuck at kind of, well, is it grade level centers or not? And I don't necessarily think past that question. And I love that this is thinking past that question, and thinking past that question in a very community-focused way, seeing the questions that are going to be asked and seeing those pieces. It's very thoughtful, and I love it because I do think we will answer that, and ultimately the community will help to answer that specific grade level center question, but that it's not just that question, and that it's part of something so much larger to move us forward for the next decade here in Westmont is amazing. The work that the team has put into it is phenomenal. Did those surveys only go to Manning and Miller families, or did they go to the whole district?
Which surveys?
The survey for the community kind of group. The one that kind of listed out, like, if you were interested, and like, what would you like to see in the next 5 years?
That was just that's the initial one for the elementary, but we will be following up with the other.
Okay, cool. So I would just like to I had to go back in my email and find it, because there's lots of emails in my email, and everybody else's. Just push those elementary families to take a minute and go back and especially get involved in this, because it's really cool. And the more folks that we get input from, the better that we create this for the future. I think this is awesome. So thank you.
Kevin, I'll just tack on a little bit. I think you should also reach out to the preschool kids.
Yes.
Those parents,
Yeah.
because they're going to be the ones that are going to be.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we'll do that.
Any additional questions or thoughts on that topic? Okay, Community Academy is the next topic.
And then this is kind of just another kind of update for the board, kind of. I'm not even sure if I'm so sold on the title Community Academy as much as the concept, but as I explained in the memo, you know, there's two things that are kind of driving my thinking here. One is we brought on 2 new board members, and I'm sure Leah, Dina, and Jess, you guys have heard 100 times. This is like jumping on a moving train, you know, because especially in the year of a pandemic, because you guys are jumping on the board, and we've been having conversations, and you're being asked to, you know, tonight to approve a levy, you know, for the district. And so that's part of what's driving it. And then the other thing too is you know, what happened this evening. We had 7 or 8 public comments, and I know sometimes there's frustration, and the board has discussed this, you know, about public comment, that you know, there isn't a dialogue. People make public comment, and you know, sometimes hopefully they hear responses to it, or there's a follow-up at another board meeting. But you know, those two things is, you know, creating a tool, I guess, for educating our community so that they have a better understanding of the workings of the school district. And, you know, today the board approved the levy. Well, what does that really mean, and what's going to happen with those dollars? Or when we approve the budget in September, you know, what happens, you know, what's that process, and where do those dollars go, and where I pay my property tax bill, what's happening with those dollars. And then possibly a book study, because, you know, that's one of the things we do as an admin team, as a district. There are certain things that we're looking at, reading, that drive some of our thinking and what we're doing in terms of our vision, mission, and maybe expanding it a little bit and bringing other people into it. And not necessarily just parents, but community members as well. And then, you know, what that helps for us then is when we are going through a process like, you know, reimagining elementary school, we have, you know, an informed, you know, base out there that can help us with that process and give us feedback and give us their thoughts. When it does come time for filling a board vacancy or board election, there are maybe individuals out there who are a little bit more comfortable and have a better understanding, and so it's not quite the shock to the system when they get on the board, you know. So that's my thinking, you know, in terms of, you know, having, you know, creating this and having various topics, well done, obviously, an exchange of ideas, but, you know, an opportunity to engage our community more, I guess, than how we currently are.
Well, I like that idea a lot, Kevin, and as you're formulating it, because I know you're still kind of putting it together in concept, and certainly see how it goes and how much support our community provides to that effort. I know it can be challenging. People have busy schedules. It's hard to always, you know, be as participatory as you would like to be, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. And there's a lot of misunderstanding in our community about what the role of a board member is and what a board member should and shouldn't be doing, and what types of decisions should you be making and not making, and types of questions you should be asking and not asking, and all that kind of stuff. And I think through our own education process, with conferences and things that you will attend over your years as a board member, you will get a better feel for that. But I think it'd be good to have a jump start to some of those conversations for the board and our community as well, for sure.
Yeah.
It feels like a really nice bridge between, you know, I hesitate to use the word chasm because I don't think it's a chasm, but a bridge between, you know, it's terrifying to apply and run for a school board position and say, can I make this commitment of my time to the community, because it's not just a Tuesday night job. Can I make this commitment of my time for 4 years? But something that has a community involvement in there. It feels like a really nice bridge.
Yeah, I also really love the idea. I mean, and not to go right to like what the challenges are. But I do think that just as the plan is unfolding, it'll be super important to think of how to get people involved, because I think you can learn a great deal about the school board by tuning into our meetings. And so I think there's that. So that's step one. And the people who are already tuning in are the ones who are doing the public comments. And so it's like, how do we get everybody else? How do we scoop up more people and broaden that knowledge and kind of demystify some of what actually happens? And so I think this could be a really great thing to do. So the kind of the publicity piece of it and, the convenience of it, I think will be really important to consider to try to get a lot of people involved, and more than the ones who are already tuning in. Because I think that's, I just want to reiterate that, that just, watching the board meetings is, number one, and reading the communication from the superintendent, all of that. There's a lot of information that already goes out there about all, all of this. And so I think that's worth mentioning too. I guess one question I just have about what it would or wouldn't be is it's not going to be like, it's not like a community forum to come in and discuss all of the action items necessarily.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But yeah.
It'd be more topic-driven,
Okay.
and then an opportunity to, possibly receive some information, have a discussion, but it'll be more topic-driven.
Okay. Great.
And I think it's probably important to note that there are rules around what we can discuss as board members and how many of us can discuss items. We can't discuss board topics or things that could come up at board meetings with more than, 2 or more? 3 or more. 3 or more, because that turns into a meeting and those kind of things. So this feels like a really nice bridge for that. Like I said, to just kind of give that two-way communication that board meetings are not designed for. They are a meeting that is held in public, but they are not a two-way meeting. And that is how they are designed. And I like that we're trying to create something that is potentially a little bit more two-way that can answer a lot of those questions. Yeah.
I also think it's nice that there will be different topics, so you're not necessarily committed. If you are a parent or a community member that wants to participate, you don't have to, I can only attend, once a month or something, or once every other month. And you can kind of, maybe if there's a particular topic that interests you, that'll be broken up maybe that way, so you don't feel like you're, getting on a moving train, just coming to a community engagement academy. So I look forward to hearing more about that as it's developing. Any other questions on that?
Nothing, just that it does need a better name though, Kevin.
Open to suggestions.
Okay, next item, policy first reading.
And similar to what we have done in the past, the policy committee reviewed several policies. There's a cheat sheet there for you, and anything that just says footnotes, that type of thing, literally the policy itself has not changed. So if you are limited with time, focus on the ones that have had bigger changes. The one policy I will draw your attention to, because it will be brand new, is policy 2265, Title IX, sexual harassment grievance procedure. This is driven by federal legislation, so this is not really something we have the option of adopting, but it's something that, as a board member, you'll want to familiarize yourself with that policy. And then you'll have an opportunity to review these. If you have any questions at our next board meeting, you can ask those questions. And then that will be our second reading, and then I'll be asking the board to adopt the policies.
All right. We have one quick question.
She can still sign. Yeah.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had that question with Jeff before,
Okay.
and yes.
I wasn't totally sure about
Yeah.
that with the levy and everything.
Yep.
Okay, good. We have several action items here. The first one is approval of statewide use of Title I funds.
And this is because of the reorganization of Manning, we're asking the board to approve Manning to have a Title I school-wide plan, and so it's included with the other buildings. That gives Lindsay and the district more flexibility in how the Title I funds are utilized within the building. And so we're asking for that approval from the board.
Can I just ask a quick question? I'm trying to get up to speed on the Title I stuff. Are these new funds for Manning, or is it, like funds that were from Miller and are now split between Miller and Manning? Because our number of students hasn't changed.
Right.
But the
So-
demographics of the buildings have
Right,
changed.
so our total allocation hasn't changed,
Okay,
but how the dollars are distributed has changed.
okay.
Right.
Okay, that's kind of, that total allocation piece, has that adjusted? So that has not adjusted, it is how it is allocated in the
Correct.
buildings. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the school-wide Title I plans for Westmont High School, Westmont Junior High, J.T. Manning Elementary School, and C.E. Miller Elementary School as presented.
So moved.
Second,
A roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Conover.
yes.
Next action item, approval of authorization for treasurer to pay additional December 2020 expenditures. The chair will entertain a motion to authorize and direct the treasurer to pay bills received in December 2020 for the 2021 fiscal year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Ms. Coyle,
Yes.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Stromeyer, sorry, Ms. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Third action item, resolution to adopt the 2020 tax levy. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution setting the 2020 tax levy as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Ms. Coyle.
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
Just a couple items in my report, just again, a reminder that come April 6th, there will be an election for local school boards. 201 will have five seats on the ballots. One is a 2-year term, and then there are 4 4-year terms, and that right now, during this time, December 14th and December 21st, is when candidates would file their petitions in order to be eligible for the election. And then also, not included in my actual report, but we just received word that Kevin Weck, our assistant principal at the high school, the Illinois Principals Association has named Kevin the DuPage Area Assistant Principal of the Year. So that's very exciting for Kevin, it's exciting for the high school. For our district, we've had Amy Quattrone has been Assistant Principal of the Year. John Jonak and Jack Baldwin have been Principals of the Year. Jack actually made it to he was a finalist for National Principal of the Year. So this does make Kevin eligible for the state level Assistant Principal of the Year. And if he earns that honor, then he would move on to the national recognition as well. So congratulations to Kevin. Good luck to Kevin.
That's great.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Yes.
And then just wish everybody happy holidays in our 201 school community.
All right, very good. Board reports. I have just one thing then, and that is I have tentatively scheduled an IASB board self-evaluation for our January 12th meeting. So I'm hoping to have a somewhat abbreviated business and action items and discussions, and then move into closed session. This will be, I believe it's going to be at South. And the our IASB representative will likely be remoting in to the conversation and leading the self-eval. I would like, again, kind of going along with what Kevin had suggested, I would like to have a portion, hopefully a portion of the self-evaluation in open session. And again, for that purpose of educating our community and letting them hear some of the conversations and some of the roles, responsibilities, do's and don'ts, social media access and participation, and a lot of topics that I think will be beneficial for our community to hear, and for us to also reacclimate ourselves to, or to hear for the first time. So I'm hoping that it'll work out that way, and then we will go have a portion of that in closed session for board discussion as well. So
Forgive me for not thinking of this sooner, because I know we've thrown this date around for a little while, but are we at all concerned about that being the same night that we're going to be discussing the proposed plans for the second semester for hybrid learning? Because that's generated a lot of discussion.
yeah, in part, and that'll be, you know, like I said, tentative, okay? And so we'll talk about that at the agenda meeting.
Okay.
And figure out what we feel is, and then I would maybe ask Kevin to be a little more robust in the Friday board reports if there's extra information that needs to get out pertaining to, specifically to hybrid plans for January, so that we're more up to speed ahead of time. I want to avoid repetitive conversations about should we or shouldn't we, you know, and all of that kind of stuff, and past conversations, but here's where we are now. This is the decision before us now. How do we get the information we need and move forward with it? And I think some of that can come to us ahead of time from Kevin, and then also our individual questions that we have for Kevin about that can also go to him ahead of time. He can respond to all board members so that we all get extra information if I have a particular question and ask it, so that everybody on the board also gets the same answer. And I think if we're a little more up to speed ahead of time, it will move that along a little more quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that that's a really important point. And again, you know, what we heard tonight is that we're looking to make that shift into in-person learning, like many of the private schools are, and so I think we're headed in a great direction. We've seen a huge shift since the beginning of the year. So I agree. I'm not sure we need to keep having, you know, such robust discussions about it necessarily here, and yeah, we'll just keep on moving forward.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome.
All right, very good. Any other board reports?
I have a quick one. So there is a really amazing fundraiser going on with the, over at Team Miller. There's the elementary holiday shop going on. Some folks were lucky enough to catch it at Ty Warner Park last week. We also have an online, everything was online. So if you weren't super comfortable coming to Ty Warner, there are the Miller Mask fundraiser. Masks are up there too. So if you head on over to Miller Elementary Holiday Shop Square.site or the Miller PTO website, you can find a link to it there and get all your fun holiday shopping done. It closes Thursday at 8, and then pickup would be Friday. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say a thank you to all of our administrators, teachers, and all of the staff for, this is our last board meeting before the end of the first half of the school year, and I just have a tremendous amount of respect for what the district has been able to achieve this year, given all of the challenges put in front of us. I want to say the same to my fellow board members. Thank you for serving in what has been a tremendously challenging first half of the year, and also to the community for being in it with us. You know, it's been said a lot this year that we're all in it together, and I firmly believe that, and I just wanted to say thank you. So I'm looking forward to 2021, which I know a lot of people are, and hopefully we can have a successful second half of the year.
Thank you, Laura.
I do have one, Joel, but it's not really a report, more so as a personal plea to the community. I know the free food program has been wonderful that has been created, that we pass out every week, and making sure that you know, the students and the children of the district are getting fed. But I've seen on several different social media sites that people who aren't using all the food are saying, well, if you want to come get it at my house, you can come get it, otherwise I'm going to get rid of it, or something like that. please, we have local food pantries right here in the community. We have food pantries in the DuPage area, Cook area, everywhere here. Please take a few minutes and run the food over there or get it to somebody who will, please. There's somebody that can use that food, so thank you.
I actually, to tag on that, I was trying to figure out where to donate some of the stuff that my kids wouldn't have part of. And PRC has a contactless drop-off. They're right by Ty Warner Park.
Yep.
Shopping cart out there basically every day, from 1 to 3 p.m. And that info is not on their website, or it's harder to find on their website. I drove by today to do it. And yeah, go for it. This is a really important time.
And I just wanted to echo a little bit what Laura's saying with thank yous, and again, to the administrators. I do see, people do talk about the impact that this whole pandemic has on children and their kids, and I appreciate all the work that administrators are doing to bring kids along, to like pick them up, to give them extra help. And I know they're working hard, and they, just to let the community know that tremendous work is being done to not just to do it now, but as Kevin talked about, to continue to do this in the future. This isn't where we're going to be. This isn't our destination. Like, again, we're all in this together to move ahead, and great work is being done that way. So happy holidays, and thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you. Future meetings and events are, well, public comment, I guess, right?
Do you need that?
Guidelines, no.
Okay.
Just make sure I'm not
Thought you were
missing,
looking
not
for the-
missing something. Oh, yeah, public comment. Any public comment? All right, let's move on. Future meetings and events. We have an elementary sing-along with Zoom links sent out to students on the morning of the event, December 16th and 17th. Second quarter ends December 18th. Winter break begins December 21st, and classes resume January 4th. There's a Manning PTO meeting on January 4th. Westmont Junior High School PTO meeting on January 6th. And progress reports, elementary school progress reports go home on January 7th, and our next school board meeting is January 12th, and it will likely be at South School. There is no closed session, second half of closed session. And so I would also like to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Take time and enjoy your family over the holidays. It's been such a challenging year for everybody, I know, and it's just, it'll feel good to have a little bit of a break and yet still feel very strange, because I know so many of us are apart from our extended families during this time. So I wish everyone the best. Happy New Year, and be safe. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.